Well, hey, Jerry.
Hello, John.
And hello, friends. Welcome to NC Family's weekly update for the week ending Friday, August 16th. I'm NC Family President John Rustin here with NC Family Counsel Jerry Royal. So the 2024 general election on November the 5th is less than 3 months away. And early voting, Jerry, in North Carolina starts in just 2 months from tomorrow. Election day will be here before we know it. And if you're like me, you're already being overwhelmed and inundated with political ads and articles. It's just unreal. And because North Carolina is such a competitive battleground state, presidential and vice presidential candidates are making our state a regular stop on their campaign travel across the nation. If you feel a bit overwhelmed now, just wait, because it's only going to get better or worse. It's definitely going to get more intense, and unfortunately, it's very likely to get more ugly as the candidates really start going at each other, which unfortunately has become a big part of our current political state and environment. But one thing we wanted to make you aware of today is the sheer number of political parties that are going to appear on the ballot in North Carolina this election year. Of course, we have become used to seeing candidates on our ballots from the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and more recently the Libertarian and Green parties. But other parties have gained access to North Carolina's ballot, including the No Labels Party. And last month, the State Board of Elections authorized the Constitution Party and the We the People Party to field candidates. And then, Jerry, just this week, a federal district court judge directed the State Board of Elections to certify the Justice for All Party. So, if I'm counting correctly, that means candidates from 8 different political parties may appear on our ballot this fall. And we will also likely have a few unaffiliated candidates as well. So the ballot is going to be really, really full. And we have more candidates in our voter guide that we're surveying that are running for federal and state level offices in North Carolina than we've had certainly in recent years, if not ever. So lots and lots of candidates out there, lots of political parties. Jerry, what do you make of all of this?
Well, John and I talked about this, how much to really step back from all this activity, all these different parties, which we, of course, are part of. We're putting together our voter guide. We've been making a lot of phone calls, emails, following up with candidates, trying to encourage them to participate, because we want to try to provide you and others across the state with a resource that'll help you decide, how do I vote? Yeah. Who is the candidate in each of the races that represents what I think is the right person? And, I told you when John and I were talking about it, this is a whole subject we could spend a lot of time on, but thought it would be helpful just to mention the big picture, yeah, which is what we all, with all that's going on, can get overwhelmed, is to step back and as Christians to take, how should we be approaching all this? How should we be responding to all of this? And of course, that's why we do what we do. We work on policy. We know that's important, but who's elected to office is also important.
Yeah, the policy happens in a political environment, and while we are nonpartisan, we operate in a very politically charged environment, and so it's important to keep a balance, because otherwise, some will say Christians just need to disengage and not get involved in politics at all. It's dirty, it's messy, and we don't have a place in it. There are others that say, we're going to hitch our wagon completely to a particular candidate or a particular political party, and that's a mistake as well. Right, Jerry?
Exactly, and that's what we really, I think, wanted to be an important part of our message for you today, is to have God's perspective as we continue to try to understand that. First of all, knowing that He tells us He's the ruler of all mankind for all of history. But He also has a plan and a purpose for government. In Romans 13 and 1 Peter, He's got very clear statements about the purpose of government. In general, just to encourage good, promote good, restrain evil. Well, how do you know what that is? Well, what is a biblical view of good and evil? What is, as you're saying, John, the biblical approach for us? I know we've got a lot of passages we've talked about. I always look at loving our neighbor. It's caring about the laws that are passed, caring about who's elected into office. And it requires work on our part. The work needs to be mainly staying in God's word, growing in our relationship with God, and then approaching things like elections, not being tossed to and fro by the political ads and all the emotion, but trying to say, what is the truth? What are the facts? How do I decide properly who to vote for? And that's what we're here to help you with. But we also want to let you know this week, we've never seen this many parties, this many, I don't think because there's so many parties, this many candidates running.
Yeah.
And so, again, we want to encourage you to do the work. And because we are months out, start looking. Now, we look today, the Board of Elections still hadn't put up your sample ballot on the State Board of Elections website. Hopefully that'll be up before too long. But they had to wait because, as John said, even this week, they added one more party to the ballot. And so...
Yeah, and I don't know, Jerry, how long those parties have to field candidates. And of course, those candidates' names need to appear on the ballots, and those ballots have to be printed. And so there's a time frame that all that has to happen. And so we're going to be keeping tabs very closely on that. And that all feeds into our voter guide as well. So, but I think, Jerry, what I hear you're saying, just kind of in summary, is it's really important for us as Christians, of course, to approach elections from a biblical perspective. But it's important to assess, in our opinion, assess the policy and create standards based on biblical principles and how those principles manifest themselves in the policy realm, as opposed to focusing. And so you're basing your decisions based on principles, as opposed to personalities and parties and politics.
And so political ads.
Yeah.
That can just throw messages out that don't give you that kind of information.
Yeah. So that is, it's a challenge. It certainly doesn't make it easy, but that as Christians, if we're really being salt and light and being responsible and acting on our civic duty, which is a great blessing that we have in this nation, it does require us to do homework. And we are here to help you do some of that homework. We're not here to be a cheat sheet and hand you a list of candidates and say, vote for these. But we're going to provide you with the information about the candidates through our voter guide process and other ways, so that you can be an informed voter and be responsible and live into that civic duty. Jerry, one interesting factor that I looked at just today was voter registration in North Carolina. Did you realize that a whopping 38% of registered voters in North Carolina are registered unaffiliated? So these voters have chosen not to associate directly with either of the major political parties, and the Democratic and Republican parties have actually lost significant political market share in recent years compared to how voter registration was even 10 or 20 years ago. And so the dynamics of our state, the political makeup of our state has changed dramatically. And I think that is playing in a lot to the rise of different political parties that are seeking and gaining access to the ballot, the number of candidates that are coming to our elections with different policy positions on issues and different stances and things like that. So it's really incumbent on us to assess, to review, to do our study, and then to make wise decisions with respect to who we believe represents those principles that we believe in, and are going to follow through and govern in a manner that is consistent with biblical principles and what God would desire for us.
And I know every week, generally we're talking about policy. We encourage you to pray that God will work in everybody's hearts and minds, all the citizens in our hearts, the elected officials. The same obviously is true for elections. For those decisions to be made prayerfully, for people to seek God and not to let these other factors, and especially now because there are so many. And I know we'll save some of this for future conversations with you, but we're even seeing in all the responses that are coming in within each party, there are different responses on various questions. So it is, if you don't read, you can all of a sudden think, well, I'm voting this way because I know This is what that party does. I think in every single party almost, you don't find the same answers all the way through the questionnaire. So that's why we continue to work to provide this for you. And so hopefully we can all, in the way we say it, be salt and light and love our neighbors in the right way as it relates to government.
Yeah. Well, Jerry, it's a very dynamic time. There's a lot going on. Of course, we're seeing a lot of activity already. It's just going to pick up. So, friends, just plan to buckle up, and we will walk through this together. We may have to run through some of it together, but we will move through it together. And we're so appreciative of you all, of your faithful support, your prayers, your involvement, and again, we are excited about what's in store. There are lots of opportunities for our state. There are lots of opportunities for us as believers to engage the culture, to be salt and light, and to set an example for what that means for others. And so I know there are lots and lots of citizens across the state who are looking for examples of what it means to be anchored in truth and then to live out that way. And so we're privileged to be able to partner with you in that and to set that example, and also to provide information that is going to help citizens in North Carolina navigate this volatile political environment that we're in. So we look forward again to working through that with you all. We appreciate your attention this week and look forward to seeing you next week. Jerry, thank you as always for your great insights. And friends, we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless you.